December 2nd, 2024. Roll call, please.
O'Brien.
Present.
Palmas.
Present.
Thorstenson.
Here.
Woodside.
Present.
Ross.
Here.
Gardner.
Here.
Six present.
I'll stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, we'll move right along. It's for the approval of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Trustee Balmas, second by Trustee O'Brien. Roll call, please.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Palmas. Thorstenson.
Yes.
Woodside.
Aye.
Ross. Garner.
Aye.
6-0.
Motion carries. Pat?
Item number 1, approval of the minutes from the November 25th, 2024 meeting. Item number 2, approval of bills for period ending December 2nd, 2024 in the amount of $670,912.03.
Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Motion by Trustee Garner, second by Trustee Ross. It was Ross, right? Roll call, please.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Palmas.
Aye.
Thorstenson.
Yes.
Woodside.
Aye.
Ross. Garner.
Aye.
6-0.
Motion carries. On to petitions and communications. Approval of a proclamation designating December 2024 as National Impaired Driving Prevention Month in the Village of Gurnee. During National Impaired Driving Prevention Month, we recommit to stopping avoidable traffic deaths and keeping America's roadways safe by driving sober, raising awareness, helping each other get home, and supporting fellow Americans who are struggling with substance abuse. During this holiday season especially, let us remember all those we have lost to impaired driving and take simple steps to save lives. Plan ahead how you'll get home after drinking or using a substance so you never get behind the wheel. Whenever you see loved ones or colleagues putting themselves or others at risk, step up to offer a hand. Now therefore, I, Thomas Hood, Mayor of Gurnee, do hereby proclaim December as Impaired Driving Prevention Month in the Village of Gurnee, and do hereby call upon all citizens, community members, and institutions to promote awareness of the impaired driving problem and to support programs, policies, and ultimately behaviors to reduce the incidence of impaired driving. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Trustee O'Brien, second by Trustee Garner. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
On to reports. Item number 1, presentation by Finance Director Brian Gosnell, Annual Comprehensive Financial Report for the period ended April 30th, 2024. Brian?
All right, thank you, Mayor. Included in the material is the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report for the period ended April 30, 2024. We'll walk through the document here. I'll point out some financial information as we go. As you know, this is the most comprehensive thing we do as far as our planning and reporting process. It is kind of the definitive look back and what happened. Unlike the budget that looks forward, the capital plan looks forward. This tells us what happened. First section, introductory section, followed by independent auditor's report, management discussion and analysis, basic financial statements and notes, required supplementary information, other supplementary information, the statistical section, and then also included was the management letter, which we'll touch on at the end. From a process standpoint, independent auditors for the village, Lauterbach and Amon. We swapped out the audit team again in 2022. We've been doing that every 5 years. It's about a 6-month process, starts in May. With the close of the fiscal year and audit planning meeting, the auditors come out, or we do a Zoom this year actually, a couple hours. In July, they'll come actually on site for a few days, and then they'll come back on site in August for about a week. In September and October, we kind of wrap it up. Goes through staff approvals here, goes through partner approvals with the firm. By the end of October, we file the comptroller's and the treasurer's report. Final document gets prepared, and then sometime in November, December, we do the presentation to the village board. We were trying to get somebody from the firm here to come out and do it this year, but we just couldn't sync up schedules. So there's no requirement that they come out, so we'll try to get them out here again next year. While all this is happening, there are a few other reports that feed into the audit. The pension fund has separate audits from the village, so those happen by a separate firm. We also have the actuary reports for the pension funds. what's known as the GASB 67, 68, which is total pension liability report, and then a GASB 75 OPEB or other post-employment benefit report. All those numbers feed into one of the statements somehow. Introductory section, this is really just principal officials org chart, transmittal letter that's prepared by staff, much like the one that goes along with the budget. The GFOA certificate of achievement, kind of preliminary information. The next thing is the independent auditors report. Here's where you actually get the opinion of the auditors. I'm happy to announce again, we had a clean opinion. So they like to point out in this section, what is the responsibility of management and then what the auditor's responsibilities are. That is followed by the management discussion and analysis. This is prepared by staff as well. Kind of gives a high-level overview of the audited financial statements from a management standpoint. Gives more of the why the numbers are what they are, as opposed to what they are. We do this on a village-wide and fund level. It also includes budget to actual highlights, capital assets, and then some debt and economic factors. Finally, we get into the financial statements. The first set is the government-wide statements. You'll see a statement in that position, which is like balance sheet and a statement of activities. Could be compared to like income statement. Government-wide statements break all village activity down into two different categories: governmental activities and business type activities. So these sets of statements take a longer term view. So you'll have things like net pension liability, OPEB, capital assets included in here, where you won't have that on the fund side. Statement of activities, again, income statement by function, breaks it down to broad categories: general government, public safety, highways and streets, and then the business type is golf course fund, and the water and sewer fund. Just a few financial highlights here. Again, this is the kind of the highest level, so there's really not a lot of context around these, but net position increased by 4.7 million. Revenues were up 7.4 from last year, up to 80.1 million. Expenses were up 7.1 to 75.4 million. You see a couple abbreviations here. RBP stands for Retirement Benefit Plans, and then ARO is Asset Retirement Obligations. That is a liability that we are required to carry on these longer term views for things such as water towers. When a water tower gets retired or hits the end of its useful life, there's a cost associated with disposing of it. A few years ago, GASB passed a pronouncement that says we have to record that liability now. So you'll see those on there as well. Then we get to the statements that everybody's more used to. These are the kind of shorter term views. So anything the village would pay or receive, say 90 days after the end of the year, will be included in here. Again, you get a balance sheet, a statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in fund balance, which is really income statement. Just a few highlights. General fund balance of 33.4 million. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the second quarter report. Positive revenue over expense variance of 2.6 million. So 2.6 million more in revenues than expenses. That was after a $3 million transfer to the capital and water and sewer capital fund. So very good performance there in the general fund. And then we'll talk about, again, the 25-26 capital plan, where some of that money, some of that excess fund balance will be spent coming up here. Moving along to some of the other funds, just point out kind of cash balances here. Motor fuel tax fund ended with 742,000. Capital improvement fund ended with 8.9 million. That may seem like a big number, but this year's budget draws that down by almost 5 million. Some of the non-major governmental funds, some small balances. Impact fee fund, 127,000. PD restricted revenue, we use that for capital, 250. And then fleet services has some built up for the timing of vehicle purchases. Getting into the golf course fund, that ended with cash of 442,000. Again, just a reminder, we're building that up for the sprinkler system that's coming up. Hear more about that in about a month or two. And then the water and sewer fund, 7.6 million in cash. Again, we're spending that down this year, and we will again next year for capital. In the notes to the financial statements, this is a good section if you want to get some background on any specific number that are in the financial statements. You can typically find the detail behind that in the notes. There's notes on accounting policies, budget information, deposits, investments, receivables, capital assets, long-term liabilities, OPEB liability, joint ventures, risk management, all that kind of stuff is in the notes. You can find it in there somewhere. Required supplementary information, there's some really good info in here on pensions. It shows our employer pension contributions. Just wanted to note, hopefully I can zoom in on this quick. If you look at this schedule, this is the police pension fund. This column here shows the excess or under what we are supposed to contribute for the ARC. You can see the last 2 years we have overfunded the police pension by quite a bit, $1.8 million. So, and that's because we've been working on a policy of just increasing it by inflation every year rather than taking a lower payment from the actuarial study. Same thing on the fire side. You can see $870,000 over the last 2 years. So that helps us with funded ratios. IMRF obviously is a different kind of funding model. Funding ratio there, 97.75%. But police and fire, police at 77 and fire at 80 is almost unheard of for a village our size in the state of Illinois. So you can see the overfunding is paying off there. Also included in this section, you'll see changes in the net pension liability. There's a couple good charts in there on investment returns, how both the police and fire funds have done, as well as OPEB liability and some budget to actual statements. Other supplementary information, here you just have some more statements, combining statements that splits out the general and the health insurance fund, and then some budget to actual schedules. And the statistical section, this is prepared by staff here. 5 sections: financial trends, revenue, debt capacity, some demographic and economic information, and operating information. Shows a 10-year history. So you can see a really nice 10-year spread on, say, like debt or EAV. Management letter was also included in the packet. There was only one current recommendation or one finding, and that was commingled cash. We had a negative in our 911 fund. That is because of the reimbursement. We spend it and then get reimbursed from the joint ETSB, and that crossed fiscal years this year, so there's not much we can really do about it. Obviously, going forward, we won't have that fund at some point, so we won't have to worry about that one again. And then there's a bunch of GASB pronouncements that we instituted this year. With that, I'm happy to take any questions on the audit before we get into the second quarter.
Anybody to my right? To my left? Good job, Brian. On to the next one, which is presentation by Finance Director Brian Gosnell, fiscal year 24-25, second quarter financial performance.
So second quarter here, so 6 months in, ending October 31, 2024. We can start to see some trends here halfway through the year. Cash position, $49.6 million, 16% checking, 52% money markets, 32% investments. That doesn't change a whole lot. 67% general fund, capital improvement fund, 14% of all money, and then the water and sewer fund at 14%. General fund, total revenues are at $28.5 million or 55.2% of budget. Expenditures, $25 million or 48.5% of budget. So we have a positive revenue over expenditure variance of $3.5 million. Just some of the timing differences, business licenses and grant proceeds, how those come in. One that we do expect to carry through the year is the red light cameras. So expect that to be down, and then insurance and seasonal contracts is more timing issues there in the general fund. Overall major revenues, again here, these account for 70% of all general fund revenues. Have an annual budget of $35.6 million, currently at 55.2% of budget, so ahead of where we should be halfway through the year. 5.4% ahead of last year, 6.7% ahead of the seasonally adjusted budget, so it takes into account the Six Flags operating season here. And then just a reminder, we added income and use tax to this to get it above 60%, so for the GFOA award in our budget document. Home rule sales tax here at 51.5% halfway through the year, 4.5% ahead of last year, almost 7.5% versus ahead of the seasonally adjusted budget, so strong sales tax performance. Same with amusement tax, 11.5% ahead of last year, 14.5% ahead of the seasonally adjusted budget. Food and beverage, here we saw a little bit of fall off year to year. We do have some outstanding food and beverage tax that'll be coming in that'll make this almost flat versus last year, but 3.9% ahead of budget. And then hotel tax, first quarter report, we noticed that this was down versus last year, and the seasonally adjusted budget, we had some back hotel taxes that we were waiting to collect. We finally collected them, so now this variance is back to positive versus last year and budget. So I mentioned during the audit presentation about the fund balance in the general fund. As we come into the kind of capital improvement planning stuff that's going to be happening here pretty soon, we ended with 33.36 in fiscal year 24, or about 74.5% of expenditures. That's 5.6 million over the upper limit. If we consider transferring 4 million and account for expenditure growth in the budget, we have to cover that. If we consider a $4 million transfer with the capital improvement plan to offset roads and maybe even, water and sewer like we've done in the past, that brings us down to that 65%. So we have plenty of items in the capital plan right now. I can tell you we're not ready to present yet, but there's a number of items that have come up that we can use this for building related as well. So that recommendation will come with the capital plan presentation. Water and sewer side, revenues at 55%, expenditures at 40.7%. Positive revenue and expenditure variance, again, we had some timing issues with insurance, but we did get some connection fees that we didn't anticipate from a budget standpoint, so that was positive. And with that, happy to take any questions on the second quarter report.
No questions. Thank you, Brian, very much. No old business, and on to new business. Item number 1, approval of ordinance 2024-73, granting 2 special use permits pursuant to the Gurnee zoning ordinance to allow installation of ground-mounted solar energy systems and to allow the solar structures to exceed 15 feet in height for Six Flags Great America located at 542 North Route 21. Pat.
Sure. So you had a pretty detailed memo from our planning administrator, Audrey and Farad, on this. So Solar Optimum HQ is representing Six Flags Great America. I'm looking for 2 special use permits to allow ground-mounted solar energy systems on the Six Flags property, and then to allow those structures to exceed a maximum of 15 feet in height. Project includes installing 40 freestanding solar structures in the northwest parking lot, but south and east of Six Flags Drive, so closer to the park, further away from the residential. Structures are designed to function as carports, so they'll provide shade while people park underneath them, and then have the solar panels up on top to generate energy for the park. So the columns are 15.38 feet in height. Solar panel on top will have a maximum height when tilted of 22.1 feet, a minimum height of 13.5. The 13.5 clearance is required in the fire code, so emergency vehicles can get underneath there. So that is why the columns are above the 15 feet in height, to get that minimum 13.5 feet on the low end for the emergency response vehicles, buses, RVs, et cetera, to be able to travel underneath them without issues. So again, 1 special use permit for the ground-mounted solar. The second is for the height. It was in front of the Planning and Zoning Board back on November 20th. Received a unanimous favorable recommendation on a vote 7-0. 1 resident attended the meeting, just had questions about just maintenance, and there was like hail damage to the panels. So no pushback from the public on that. I think we have a representative from Solar Optimum HQ here tonight if there's further questions. But with that said, it is ready for your consideration.
We start with the motion, and then if there's questions, we can do that afterwards. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by trustee
Second.
O'Brien, second by trustee Garner. Any questions or discussion? Trustee O'Brien?
Had a question, but I also have a comment. First, I'll start with a comment. Super green, love it. I didn't know what 6.4 megawatts of power meant, so I looked it up. That's the equivalent of 6,400 houses per year. So that's enough electricity to power 6,400 houses. Fantastic. So nicely done. Plus, it's also getting shade for the cars that are under it and everything else, and not using up farmland to put it. Dig it all. My only question had to do with how do we prevent people from running into the post and knocking it down or something like that?
Sir, if you could step to the microphone. Just state your name.
Eric Godinez, Solar Optimum. The steel, it's a impact-resistant steel. It's not going to stop someone ramming it at 50 miles an hour, but it is designed to withstand low impacts from vehicles.
Thank you. That's all I had, Mayor.
All right, next, Karen. Trustee Thorstensen.
I also thank you for bringing Six Flags along on our sustainability journey, so thank you very much. So I do have a question on the tilt, because on the higher side of the tilt, it's the 22 feet. And I didn't see this in here. Is it generally going to be tilting higher to a particular direction?
Yes, so the low end typically is on the south side of the array, and the north side would be the high side. And it's going to vary, maximum 22.1, but because of the undulation in the parking lot, it might be in some areas 20, 21, but not to exceed the 22.1.
And since that highest level of tilt would be facing north, is there any impact for visibility on the homes in that area? Quality acre?
High side will be away from the residents because the panels will be facing more towards the south, correct?
Correct.
Oh, I thought you said the highest tilt would be north.
Correct. So the low end, the array would face south, so the low end would be on the south side. The high end would be on the north.
Yeah, I guess I understood that, but
Okay.
maybe the point you have, as was mentioned at PZB, is glare on the potential on the south side, but actually, since it's the high end, what's the low height? I'm going to look towards David a moment. The low height of the trees or the topography over there off of Quality Acres or Lodeski? I guess I asked a tricky one. Sorry about that.
If you give me a second, I can look it up.
All right, I'm just, trying to figure out, is it going to sometimes be visible, always be visible? Like the last time we had a discussion on this is when we put the video pole out on 94.
So we can, if you have other questions,
Oh,
and then
that's
we'll
it.
move on to other
Thank you.
people, and then David can move back to you.
Sure, thank you.
So, trustee Russ?
I just wondered about the parking places. Are you going to change the configuration of the parking, or is it going to stay the same and you just put this up around it?
So for the most part, it will stay the same. About a third of the array will need to be restriped just to keep that south-facing and production of the system. We want to keep it at south as much as possible.
My left, any questions or comments?
No questions.
You want to go slow so David can find an answer?
Okay. So I can add that the solar arrays, the closest point to the closest home in Quality Acres is about 900 feet away. The elevation of Quality Acres is in the mid 725 or so versus the parking lot looks to be around 710 or less. So the parking lot sits lower than what Quality Acres does. There's a heavy tree line on the back side of Quality Acres as well. So if you could see a bus parking in that front parking lot inside the ring road, you may be able to catch the top of the solar arrays, but it's a fairly significant distance away at that same time.
Thanks, and that bus is a good example for me. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, so, let's see, was there a motion? Already did that, okay. Roll call, please.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Balmas.
Aye.
Thorstenson.
Yes.
Woodside.
Aye.
Ross. Garner.
Aye.
6 aye.
Motion carries. Thank you for coming out tonight. It's always nice when a partner of Six Flags can do green things without us prompting them to do them, so we appreciate their initiative on this and look forward to having this done for this when the park opens. Is that your intention?
Our intention is to start construction during the off-season, build out as much as we can, weather permitting, and then if we go into the normal operating season, we'll have to phase the project out to keep the impact low to the park and the business.
Okay.
But thank you.
Thanks for coming tonight. Right, on to item number 2, approval of ordinance 2024,
74.
authorizing execution of an intergovernmental land exchange agreement by and between the Lake County Forest Preserve District and the Village of Gurnee. Pat?
Sure. So this came up when we were working with the railroad and their contract and the Forest Preserve, and they were working on the railroad bridge over Route 41 as far as staging up at Public Works. So you got a memo from David on this with some aerial maps. The first one there shows the Public Works facility, and then up there at the southwest corner of 41 and the railroad tracks, there's a shaded parcel that's north of Public Works, south of 41, that the Forest Preserve actually owns. We own the rest of the property, obviously, surrounding that, and to the east a little bit there. As you flip the map over, the next picture, you've got Fire Station 3. So to the east of Fire Station 3, on the other side of the ComEd right-of-way, between the river and the ComEd right-of-way, is a parcel that we own. That obviously, that far back there, floodplain, separated from everything. We would never use it. Forest Preserve owns the property to the north, south, and east. And then finally, the final picture on there, 3 properties on Kilbourne Road that were floodplain purchases that were tore down. That Forest Preserve owns the property to the west. Again, as part of the grant process to tear those down, can't be built on again, have to be kept open and natural space. So during the discussions with the Forest Preserve about using the parcel for the railroad staging, they had asked about a land swap and had brought up these other properties that the village owns, that the Forest Preserve basically surrounds, and would like to add those to their list of ownership in exchange for this parcel up north of Public Works, which actually we can use for some material storage if needed. So made sense to staff, made sense to the Forest Preserve. Forest Preserve's attorneys drew up an agreement. Attorney Winter took a look at it, had a couple little tweaks that were made, so it is before you now for consideration.
Is there a motion?
Second.
Motion by trustee Garner, second by trustee Woodside. Any comments or discussion? Trustee Carstensen?
So can you, I thought you were going to restate, if you don't mind, Pat, we're getting back 0.18?
Yeah, so the parcel that we are receiving from the Forest Preserve is under a quarter of an acre. The parcel behind Fire Station 3 that we own that they're looking for is 12.1, again, up against the Des Plaines River. And then the 3 parcels on Kilbourne combined to 1.43 acres. Again, that 13.5 acres that the village owns is unusable property to us. The 0.18 parcel that the Forest Preserve owns is usable to the village.
I missed the 12.1, so thank you. I do.
Yes, trustee Balmas?
The village has been maintaining those properties.
I think we mow the right-of-way on Kilbourne. Do we mow those entire properties or just the right-of-way?
No, they mow,
We mow the entire
they go
properties.
pretty far back. So what kind of maintenance then, or plans does the Forest Preserve have in that? I mean, is it going to?
I'm fairly certain the Forest Preserve would let it return to natural, and then we would continue to maintain the right-of-way by mowing the right-of-way only.
Okay. So it's going to be a little more weedy
A little more weedy.
I mean, I'm not sure why we're mowing the whole thing right now, to tell you the truth. I guess if I knew that, I would have instructed Public Works just to mow the right of way, because it's, no, we're not using it for anything, so I'm not sure why
Correct.
we're mowing it.
Well, that means the other properties that are there that they're not seeking yet can be, go to weed. Okay, thank you. Just curious.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? Oh, Trustee Ross?
Well, sometimes when we take houses down like that, park wants the property, they asked if they wanted it, or it's decided to go with the forest preserve.
The Park District generally has interest in the ones on the east side of Kilbourne, adjacent to their existing parklands. They have not expressed any interest in any property on the west side of Kilbourne.
It's too far away from.
Yeah. Yes.
More questions or comments? Roll call, please.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Balmas.
Aye.
Thorstenson.
Yes.
Woodside.
Aye.
Ross. Garner.
Aye.
6 aye.
Motion carries. Item number 3, approval of ordinance 2024,
75?
adding one Class 1 liquor license by amending Section 6-56 of Article 2 of Chapter 6 of the Gurnee Municipal Code entitled Alcoholic Beverages, Texas Roadhouse, 6050 Gurnee Mills Circle East. Pat?
Sure. So following a little bit of complication with a gas main that went undetected when they originally platted where they wanted to put Texas Roadhouse. It's obviously back on track if you've been out there, moving forward nicely to the point that they're looking for a liquor license. So they have applied for a Class 1. That's the sale of alcoholic liquor for consumption on premise or sold, as well as the sale and service of to-go mixed drinks and single-serving wine pursuant to Illinois state statute. So completed the application process. Police department did their normal background check, found nothing to prohibit issuing the license, so it is before you for consideration.
Is there a motion?
So,
Second.
Motion by Trustee Balmas, second by Trustee O'Brien. Any questions or comments? Roll call, please.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Balmas.
aye.
Thorstenson.
Yes.
Woodside.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Garner.
Aye.
Motion carries. On to item 4, approval of issuing a Class 2 primary sales tobacco license to Bilal Assad to operate Green Planet Smoke Shop, 4948 Grand Avenue, Suite 9B, formerly Z Vapor. Pat?
Sure. So Z Vapor has been in town since 2015. Was issued a Class 2 tobacco license back in 2022 when we implemented the license requirement. It's been purchased by a new owner who plans to rename it to Green Planet Smoke Shop, but operate it the same as Z Vapor is right now. Since there's a Class 2 license out there for Z Vapor, this doesn't require a municipal code amendment, but the village board still needs to issue a license. So it's basically a tobacco license transfer. The new owner manager did go through the application process, the police department background check. They found nothing to prohibit the license, so it's before you for consideration. And then I would just remind the board that we only allow 5 primary licenses in town. So this keeps us at 5, which is where we've been since we implemented the license requirement.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Trustee Woodside, second by Trustee Thorstenson. Any comments or discussion? Trustee O'Brien?
Deputy Gahn, just curious, how have they been with compliance checks? Is it going to be the same staff, and does Mr. Assad own any of the other ones in town?
I don't know the answer to if he owns other ones in town, but we haven't had any violations from the previous owner, or from that owner.
Thank you.
Roll call, please.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Balmas.
Aye.
Thorstenson.
Yes.
Woodside.
Aye.
Ross. Garner.
Aye.
6 aye.
Motion carries. On to public comment. Anybody that would like to step up to the microphone and state their name may do so. Floor is closed, and at this point, we're going to go into executive session. Brian, could you give us the reason why?
Yes, we have to discuss one item, and that is to discuss the compensation for a specific employee. That's 124/2C1. That's the basis. We need a motion and roll call vote.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by trustee Ross, second by trustee Garner. Roll call, please.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Thomas.
Aye.
Thorstenson.
Yes.
Woodside.
Aye.
Ross. Garner.
Aye.
Motion carries. There'll be no action when we come back out, but, so you don't need to stay.